I first started taking yoga almost like 10 years ago just to kind of help me manage my stress. I have a back. There was not a lot of spaces that were leading yoga in Espanol, spaces that were maybe not as accessible for my abuelita. When I started practicing restorative yoga, I think that's when my body was really like chill out, girl, like let yourself just be held and supportive.
Hi everyone, I'm Esmeralda, your career coach, mom of two, and founder of New Horizon Moms. New Horizon Moms exists to empower women professionals to build a career on their terms so they can be successful at every stage of motherhood. Today, we're continuing our self care series focused on the importance of taking care of you, the mom, through restorative practices. Moms, when's the last time you had a quiet moment to yourself and you could actually focus on your breath or lie down on the floor and stretch your body? As moms, we are prone out to burnout, stress, immune diseases, and mental health issues because we juggle so much and leave little to no time to care for us. It's amazing how stopping to do deep belly breaths really clears your mind, slows down your heart rate, and gives your body that rest that it craves in the middle of a hectic day. Today, I am happy to introduce Klaudia Paletta. Klaudia is the founder of Pink Means Go, a bilingual wellness organization creating culturally affirming spaces for Latinas. A certified yoga teacher and a sound bath facilitator, she started Pink Means Go after recognizing that her abuelita had no wellness spaces that spoke her language. So, through retreats, community programming, and workshops, she leads Nuestra Comunidad back to something our abuelas never had permission to claim: rest as a radical, revolutionary act. So let's take a look at Klaudia and Pink Means Go in action. Here, Klaudia is giving a presentation to the community. She does a lot of yoga events outdoors, and here she is with some of her team. One of Claudia's recent events was for Dia de la Mujer, International Women's Day. Let's take a look. Welcome, Claudia.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. What a lovely introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here with us, Claudia. So, first, Claudia, can you tell us how you found out about wanting to be a Latina wellness facilitator and what inspired you to create Pink Means Go?
Yes, awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you and to share my story and just a little bit about what I do. My name is Claudia. I'm a first generation Mexican American, Latina in the wellness industry. I first started taking yoga almost like 10 years ago just to kind of help me manage my stress. I have a background in retail leadership. And during COVID, it was a really difficult, challenging time, especially for my grandmother who lived in a senior living residence. And I was just kind of like, okay, let me share a little bit of yoga with her. She was figuring out how to use WhatsApp and how to just do video calling. And we started doing a little bit of like yoga and silla. And she was like, Mija, I don't understand. What do you want me to do? So it was really just about keeping her joints mobile, helping with her mental health. A lot of us were feeling really just isolated during that time. And it was during this time that it became really clear to me that there was not a lot of spaces that were leading yoga in Espanol, spaces that were maybe not as accessible for my abuelita. And I think that was kind of like where this like, semilla was really planted for me. And it's been 6 years now, and I have just met such wonderful señoras and abuelitas and just members of our community. And they have taught me so much too, about just life. And that's kind of what propelled me in this direction of growing Pink Means Go and of really being almost like a disruptor in the wellness space because I'm teaching, yoga en silla, yoga en español, yoga al aire libre, just really spaces that center our comunidad like right from the very start. It's just, it's so fulfilling to my heart.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing with us and to inspire others as well that they can pursue something new, and especially that you saw that connection of a need, a great need in our comunidad. So I love it. So, Claudia, how did you first discover restorative practices and what impact have they made in your life?
Yeah, so I am an anxious girly. I like to normalize that. I think that sometimes we could have these beliefs or these perceptions of wellness facilitators. So I, have lived with anxiety from a very young age. I have had anxiety attacks, and I was, again, in a job that was very demanding. I had to lead teams and really kind of be that leader and have a lot of pressure on myself, right? So I started practicing yoga as a way to connect with my body. In the beginning, I was doing a lot of hot yoga and I was like sweating and loving it, but still kept feeling like there was a little something missing. And when I started practicing restorative yoga, I think that's when my body was really like chill out, girl,
Yeah.
like let yourself just be held and supportive. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about restorative practices is as a first gen eldest daughter, like siempre I feel like I have to do it all. And this was the first time that I started relearning and reframing that like no, like it's okay to rest. Like you don't have to earn your rest. You don't have to work 60 hours a week and then just be like, okay, now I can relax. I love that restorative yoga has taught me to listen to the subtle like little signs that my body is giving me and also that space to just be like, let me melt, you know?
Yes.
And I did want to mention like some of my teachers that I absolutely love and want to shout out that I've learned so much from is Octavia Rahemm. This book is amazing, and as you can tell, I use it very much. She also has podcast that has little bite-sized practices that can be incorporated. Tracee Stanley, Radiant Rest, like this is a yoga nidra practice book. It's taken me a little longer to get through this one, which I think it's okay, kind of the point. But again, a beautiful, just wonderful teacher that if you're wanting to explore yoga nidra or those practices, this is where I would say like again, beautiful way to start. And Jillian Jillian Pransky is who I did my training with. And again, her book, Deep Listening, was a really impactful book in the way that I lead. And again, just kind of coming back to our bodies, listening to those subtle messages that our body is saying, and then also being kind to ourselves, where it's like we're learning how to rest when society is telling us, like, you have to do more, you have to do this and do that. And it's just like, no, it's okay to just take a moment or two to like come back, ground, and be with ourselves. So I did want to share those with, with our community and just let them know like these are beautiful, wonderful teachers to start with.
Wonderful. And we'll be linking the names of all of these books and that podcast you mentioned. So if our viewers are interested in wanting to learn more, they can find that information. And Claudia, I really appreciate how you mentioned the fact that rest doesn't need to be earned, that it is something that we should be doing and we shouldn't feel guilty about doing either. And for our mom community, this is just such a big thing to keep in mind because we're running around doing all the things, caregiving, working, doing just everything. And sometimes we forget that we don't need to earn that rest. And that, yes, you're right. Our society tells us to keep go, 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 but we can't keep pouring from an empty cup. And so I'm really excited to learn more about these restorative practices that our moms can incorporate in their day to day. So, speaking of restorative practices, tell us what kind of restorative practices exist.
Nice. So when we think of restorative and resting, there's many ways to look at it. There is sensory rest, there's creative rest, which is one of my favorites. There's also social rest, right? And physical rest. And it could be a combination of all of these things, or it could be something that really calls to you. Physical rest is like sleeping, practicing those restorative yoga holds. Sensory rest would be kind of like that quiet time. I love to practice sensory rest like in the shower, which I know sounds really strange, but just allowing ourselves to be in the shower like a moment or two, feeling that water, right? Like coming down, or like as you're washing your hair or lathering your body, that is a moment that we can take of rest instead of being like, oh, I gotta hurry up. And like, we all kind of know like
Yeah.
that rush, but can we just, be mindful and be like, okay, let me just feel like my hair. Let me, lather my body. Let me take a moment to be here. I also started putting little Epsom salt, scented Epsom salt at the bottom of the shower when I shower. Again, just like a little micro practice, right? That doesn't involve us going away or going somewhere for an hour.
Mhm.
Creative rest, reading, practicing maybe with your kiddos, coloring, um, going on a nature walk. I love doing color walks, which means like we'll go out and I'm gonna look for the color purple. And as I'm walking, I'm scanning my surroundings to look for a purple flower, or, today I'm gonna look for birds. And those are ways that we're resting. That doesn't necessarily, again, mean we're laying down in bed or we're adding a whole bunch of stuff. Social rest, say no when we want to say no instead of saying yes. Sometimes we say yes even though we want to say no, so kind of honoring that time, right? Because we only have so much capacity.
Yeah.
um, and then physical rest, which would be the physical yoga practice, or even just before bed. This is another of my like little micro practices, is
Mhm.
elevating your feet, like putting two pillows underneath your feet as you're laying down,
Mhm.
elevating your feet. It could be during reading time, right? If you're with your little and you're reading to
Yeah.
them, you can also kind of be like, oh, let's put our little feet together, or let's do a
Yeah.
butterfly pose. Just this little microwaves that we can incorporate
Yeah.
rest into our lives that feel obtainable. Because I know from experience with my friends that are mamas, I hear like, well, I don't have time. I'm being pulled
Mhm.
in so many directions. I want to do this, but when am I going to do it? I'm doing
Yes.
50 million things. And I think with when my bestie became a mom, the first thing I was just like, just see if you can take a little longer in the shower. And if you can't take a little longer in the shower, see if you can slow down a little bit. I think the mindful walks, and even when we go to bed, we go to bed kind of like in a hurry, right? We're like, okay, it's bedtime. Just making those intentional,
Yeah.
like little shifts are gonna have a big impact. And even if you don't feel the impact right away, you will begin to notice it like over time, involving our senses. If there's a certain scent that you like, seeing if you can bring that. For me, that's the eucalyptus in the bathroom.
Yeah.
that canela, I have like a little canela stick here, like in my office that like
Mhm.
grounds me and
Yeah.
just reminds me of that rest, right? Of that I am worthy of rest. Even though there's so much going on, it's okay for me to take that breath and be like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
it's okay. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to ask you to help our moms who've not heard about restorative yoga or even a sound bath. Can you tell
Right.
us what that looks like?
Yeah. Restorative yoga really, the intention is to create a space for your body to land and to be held and to feel supportive. So if you're stepping into a restorative class, you are most likely going to be there for an hour to 75 minutes to 90 minutes if you're really like lucky, right?
Yes.
And you have a ton of pillows, a ton of blocks, a lot of props that are there to really support your body so
Mhm.
that all of this tension that we're holding can like melt down. And at home, if you practice at home, I have a couple of recordings. They're really short because, again, they're like micro ones. You can
Yeah.
support yourself with your pillows, with your blankets that you have at home. And what
Mhm.
is happening during restorative practices is that we're bringing the awareness to our body. We're scanning the
Mhm.
body to see if, we feel any sensations. It might be tightness, it might be tense. There might be
Yeah.
some areas that feel really relaxed, but kind of becoming aware of just how our body is feeling.
Mm.
And we hold these poses for about 4 to 6 minutes, and that's really for our subconscious body to release that stress, right? Like for me, it's always my shoulders. I'm like this, and then as I'm in class, I'm
Mm.
like, oh, okay. But the idea is that whether we want to or not, like sometimes we walk around just feeling stress or unnecessary
Mhm.
tension. So in restorative class, we're learning how to allow ourselves to be supportive, right? To not, you don't have to hold your head up, like release it onto the block or
Mm.
release it onto the pillow. And as you kind of become more comfortable and your body starts to release, then you'll notice your mind will also start to release. And then you'll notice your breath become softer. And a lot of people tend to fall asleep during these
Mm.
experiences.
Yeah.
In a sound bath, what is happening is your nervous system is also relaxing. Your nervous system is allowing to focus on the sounds that are kind of coming in and holding you, right? And
Yeah.
vibrating in a different way. And so you have a combination of the restorative practice of learning how to listen, how to be held and be supported. And then you have the experience of the sound that is helping your mind and your brain kind of focus on something so that your body can relax. And again, not all people will feel that this is really relaxing at first. I actually think restorative practices is one of the hardest things you can do because our
Mhm.
minds are going to be like, oh, I'm in class, but I have to do all of this tomorrow, or did I do
Yeah.
that before I left the house? So it's a practice of, again, for me it's been a practice of learning how to be supported, accepting help, right, and allowing ourselves to fully be supported. And I love when I lead classes, I love to bring the supportive nature and earth and just, I think of the ocean and I think of, La Madre Tierra supporting our body and the elements really coming in and helping us. And it's been a really beautiful experience to be able to create these spaces where people can begin to be like, oh, like I can relax, I can rest, I can fall asleep for like a few minutes. Or sometimes people are like, was I asleep? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe. But
Yeah.
I don't know about your experience, but you know, growing up, especially like I said, I'm the eldest daughter, I'm first gen. I think, being busy was rewarded, and I, associated that with like success. And I think now
Mhm.
I want to be successful in the way where I'm like, I want to be able to rest. I want to go and, float in the ocean. And it's been a long journey to be able to even say that that is something that I want, right? And be
Yeah.
able like, yeah, restful is our it's essential to us. It's,
Yes.
it's something that we and I love it for the mamas that are on this journey of wanting to incorporate more restful practices, because
Yeah.
you all are modeling that rest and that ease for like your kiddos,
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah.
like such an impact for our next generation. So I also want to applaud that, because I think, it's so crucial for all of us to just be more rested.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned, and especially helping us understand that we may think that yoga is this, you have to be really flexible and get in all these positions and hold your balance, but you've taught us that there is a yoga out there where you can actually just let go.
Hmm.
And I'm an eldest daughter too, so I know I suffer from wanting to always do more, and that resting was not okay, and that when I became a mom, it just seemed like that compounded even more because not only was it to keep doing all the things I was doing pre-motherhood, but now add on top of that, well, I've got to do this activity with the kids, and we've got to add this other thing, or we've got to hit all these milestones. And I got to a point where it was too much. And it took me a long time to realize that I didn't have to earn my rest, and that if I was going to keep showing up for my kids, that I needed to take care of me. And it didn't require anything fancy or expensive. It just really, all it took was to just stop, like you said, be grounded and appreciate. I loved what you said about La Madre Tierra, of feeling supported because nature can be so healing. The different frequencies you were talking about with the sound baths, I love it. I think all of that is just very healing, and it, like you said, you just let go. I know I found myself some days just kind of like this, and you don't realize when you're about to lay down or sit down, you're like, wow, I didn't realize that, I'm kind of walking around like this because I was carrying my child, or was carrying a heavy bag of groceries, and you just don't realize those things until you actually just stop. So I appreciate you mentioning these techniques that moms can do to take better care of themselves. So, Claudia, once moms start to do these restorative practices on a regular basis, help us understand what kinds of changes she can experience with her body and nervous system.
Yeah, I think one of the and I think you said it beautifully too, right? You'll start to notice more. You're like, oh yeah, I noticed, right? Because we sometimes can be just so in auto like pilot that we don't realize that we're holding our breath, right? Like we're like, or maybe we're only breathing through the chest instead of like breathing like all the way into the belly, right? And kind of just expanding. I think we begin to learn the power of the pause and the
Mhm.
power of like just slowing down. So little micro practices have such a huge impact on our nervous system. And I think like if there's anything that the moms take away from today's call is that a little breath, a little pause, a little moment can have such a huge impact on our nervous system. In the long term, I think something beautiful that happens with restorative practices or with just practicing yoga is we begin to cultivate this like really loving kindness relationship towards ourselves, and not only towards our body but just towards our mind and our heart. Like I feel like we give ourselves more grace, right? We're like, I'm just human. I'm doing the best I can. That inner dialogue, that inner voice that can sometimes be very critical begins to, again, just be a little bit more soft, because we are learning to be okay with being supportive, being okay with asking for help, being okay for taking a moment, right? And not feeling like we're always on this like sense of urgency. And of course, life happens and there's things that will need you to act quickly and take action. But those little micro moments, like drinking your water, drinking your cafecito, right? Like having your lunch. And I always laugh with having lunch because when I was in retail, I would work through my 15s, I would work through my lunch, and now I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like,
Mm.
but I was for many years, I think I was in retail for like 15 years. That was just normal for me. And I would eat, right? And I'm even like, we eat like this instead of just being like, no, let me take my time. I
Yeah.
think like restorative practices also really help us with our stress level.
Mhm.
They help our body just softly release. And I think that's the beautiful part. Like as you're laying, one of my favorite is to do like butterfly pose. So the soles of your feet are together,
Mhm.
your knees are
Mhm.
open wide to the side like a book. And then you can put two pillows underneath and relax your head back. And I think that position of just being open. My neck just cracked as I did that because it was like, yes, of being open just teaches us so much. And again, these are little things that you can do as you're falling asleep, or even it's a little harder, I think, for most people in the morning because
Mhm.
our mind wants to go, or you got to get the kiddos to school, or, just schedules. But I think if you can incorporate these micro pauses into your
Mhm.
life, like you'll really begin to see that shift, not only in your stress level, but just in the way that you respond to things. And,
Mhm.
a lot of the times where we can be very reactive, and that pause allows us to be more responsive.
Oh, I love that. I think when you were talking about, you start your day and you're off chasing everything, going after everything, to first think, let me take a pause, let me take a deep breath, let me not be in this like anxious mode before I go and start my day. I think that makes a huge difference, especially for moms, because that constant list is running in our heads. And you've probably seen the memes online where they show that a mom's brain or a woman's brain has like hundreds of tabs open.
Yeah.
And I think if we took time to pause and maybe close some of those tabs or not open any more
Yeah.
tabs, that's going to help us stay not only calmer, but not react, like you were saying, not be so reactive to everything that's going on. But it's hard. I know I still struggle with this, and I'm 6 years into motherhood. But I think having that reminder of this is why you should invest that 1 minute, 2 minutes, even 5 minutes of just taking that break,
Yeah.
drinking that water, actually sitting down to eat, not kind of gnawing on something, right? While you're fixing dinner or lunch. I know I've been guilty of that. So thank you for reminding us that, yes, those micro pauses, these practices are so powerful and easy to do. So, on that note, can you share other examples of micro practices that a mom can do throughout the day?
Yeah, I think for me, our most powerful tool that we have, it's free and it's accessible, is our breath, right? So even just right now, as you and I are kind of having this conversation, if we were to bring our hands into a belly and just take a nice deep breath in the middle of our call, like that was like a few seconds. When you are maybe in line for pickup, right? Just kind of training yourself to take that deep breath, because most of us, when we take a deep breath, we tend to, and you'll see it here, like I'll say, take a deep breath, and we'll do this,
Yeah.
right? And that still is up. But if we kind of ground into the belly and then take a deep breath, you can take a full expansion.
Yeah.
So I think, tuning into the breath, starting with breath, in the morning when you wake up, opening your eyes and taking that first breath, intentional, right?
Yeah.
Is great. I think incorporating this little micro moments of just slowness, the drinking of the water, the drinking of your tea, the
Mhm.
shower, right? Just taking a moment again, like, and that's going to help us connect with the body too. Because again, we're kind of just trying to get through we're going to the next tab, but slowing down. And I think as we kind of do these little micro practices, our brain starts to realize that like it's okay. Like nothing, nothing horrible happened while you and I took a deep breath together. And I'm like, oh, maybe we can do three. I think the
Mhm.
walks with the kiddos, like even if the
Yeah.
kiddo is on the stroller, I think that's a beautiful way to have that like sensory rest where
Mhm.
you are really in the present moment. Um, I think that's a beautiful practice to have um, before you jump on any call or send an email.
Yeah.
Taking a moment to just
Yeah.
breathe. If you work from home and you have a desk, having something on your desk that reminds you to take that intentional practice. So for me, I have
Mm.
my little canelita stick. I also have like my little crystal that I like to just feel so that I'm not so going into the next thing, but that allows me to stay grounded. And then at night, seeing if you can incorporate like one posture, to start. And then eventually, like maybe make it to a restorative class or make it
Yeah.
to a sound bath. And I think the beautiful thing about wellness is that it looks so different for everybody, right? Like even this restorative practices look so different. I have a good friend that has her phone on do not disturb and I'm like I could not do that. But that's her way of having like her sensory,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um but it really is just so beneficial for all of us to allow ourselves to give ourselves permission to be like, hey, you're doing a great job. It's okay.
Mhm.
Like, sit down, you
Yeah.
know, rest, siéntate.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So now that we've learned what a restorative practice is, what it's like to incorporate that in our busy days, and then how we're going to feel when we continue to do this on a frequent basis, what would you tell a mom who feels guilty about taking time for herself?
Thank you for, bringing that up too and like acknowledging that because I do feel like it's a privilege to take 30 minutes or an hour, right, to invest and like pour kind of into yourself. I
Mhm.
think if there's something that I've learned is, and I kind of mentioned it to you in the beginning, is like as we're relearning to rest, as we're relearning that these practices sustain us, we're
Yeah.
also, taking care of our family because
Mhm.
when we're well, our families will be well,
Yeah.
and I think like kind of reframing that as much as possible. And also it comes for me in my experience, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to,
Mhm.
ask maybe a friend or a family member, hey, can you watch the kiddo for 30 minutes,
Mhm.
while I do this? And I think giving yourself lots of grace as a mom and
Yeah.
just being like, it's not selfish for me to take this time to care for myself because as we care for each other, we're caring for our families, we're caring for our communities. When we're rested, we're more reflective, right? And like
Mhm.
more reflective, we can make more conscious choices, right? Instead of being
Yeah.
responsive and
Yeah.
maybe have a short temper. I know if I don't get enough sleep, I'm very like, you know. So I know that about myself, and I think
Mhm.
for the moms, like just really giving yourself lots of grace
Yeah.
and reframing that as like, as I care for myself, I'm also caring for my family. I'm
Mhm.
investing in the future of my kiddos because, I want to
Mhm.
be there with them. I think stress is one of the things that is really hard on our bodies.
Yeah.
And if we can help ourselves to manage that stress or to tend to ourselves,
Yeah.
we're investing in being active, well rested mamas for the future. And the
Mm.
kiddos will see, the kiddos will see that being modeled, and 20, 30 years from now, like they'll be like, rest? Yeah, we do. I have a scheduled rest in my, how radical is to think
Yeah.
of that, of the future woman, the future mamas being like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, I'm gonna go take a 30-minute restful, or we go on our
Yeah.
mindful walks. I think kind of also
Yeah.
looking at that, and also acknowledging that those feelings of guilt, those feelings of like, ooh, like I shouldn't be doing this maybe, like acknowledge and just being like, hey, like I'm choosing, like it, I can feel this and also choose to like invest in myself.
Yes, absolutely. And it makes me think about my situation. So I have boys, and so I want also my boys to learn that when they grow up and they have their spouse, that they also learn that my spouse needs rest and how can I support her in making sure that she also gets that because I witnessed growing up that my dad allowed my mom to take time for rest, that he supported her in doing that. So it's huge because it just has these ripple effects like you said, that both, the kids and your partner, they're kind of all right there with you, seeing how powerful it is that when you are taking care of yourself, if you're calmer, your kids are also going to bounce off that same energy. And I have many examples of mornings where I just started off on the wrong foot. And those were the days where my kids also were either giving me more tantrums, more pushbacks. Maybe quick conversation with my husband didn't quite go the right way because I wasn't my best self in the moment. And so, yeah, I think that this is something very powerful that moms of all stages, whether with a newborn or even many years down the road into motherhood, we can always keep this as a great reminder.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you brought up like from a nervous system perspective, like if our nervous system is calm, right? Like when we're interacting with other people, like as
Yeah,
humans, we kind of tend to mirror that energy, right? So we'll
yeah,
we'll be like, oh, like this person is calm. Whereas like I'm sure I've walked in and somebody's like really like kind of in my face. I'm like, oh, well now I gotta be like extra. So it's kind of like
yeah,
just also that beautiful reflection of like you said, if you're modeling like okay you're calm, or even if you are with your kiddo and maybe you're not having the best day, right? You could be like, hey, like I'm not having the best day, and I've learned
yeah,
this with my niece. I'll just be like, hey, I'm a little tired today, so if I'm, this is why I'm reacting that, responding this
yeah,
way. And like they know, and I think like
yeah,
that's the beautiful ripples of just being able to like have these conversations. And like your
yeah,
dad, like you remember your dad, your mom resting, and like now you want to model that. So it's just
yeah.
kind of like this beautiful, restful practices that you saw modeled when you were younger.
Absolutely. And so to close our conversation, for a mom that would like to learn more about your events, you're based out in California. If there's a mom that's in the area where you are, how can she learn more about any in-person events that you have or any virtual events? Tell us about how a mom can find more about the type of work that you do or even join a future event.
Yeah. They can follow me or go to my website, pinkmeansgo.com. All my events are listed there. I also have a few resources that I will share with you, Esmeralda. They're
Yeah.
micro practices, they're all free. This is just a toolkit for you to have in your back pocket. You can listen to it at night before you're, headed to bed. And again, for me, in the wellness space, it's really important to make these practices accessible. And one of the things for accessibility for me is that time. We don't all have the luxury of an hour studio class. So those little micro, just 5 to 12 minute sessions are really important, I think, and a great way to start. So they can follow me also on Instagram, pinkmeansgo.com. And in the future, I'm hoping to bring back a virtual restorative class. So stay tuned for that later this year. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, for our viewers, I will be sharing Claudia's contact information, and also she has graciously shared with us a freebie, a restorative practice that you, as a mom, can listen to. It's free, it's only 10 minutes, and I've tried it, and I can tell you it definitely helped me just wind down in a completely different way. And like you were saying earlier, I was like, oh, I could just relax. So
Yeah.
I'm sure other moms will enjoy doing this restorative practice as well.
Yay.
Thank you, Claudia, so much for joining us today. I love this conversation, and thank you for sharing all these nuggets of information and these things that we can take away and hopefully put one of these into practice.
Yes.
So, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye bye.
Bye. Gracias.
For our audience, Claudia has graciously gifted us a mini restful practices guide. It's an audio guide that you will be able to listen to so that you can feel grounded and connected to your breath and body. You can scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link below in the video description. Remember, you can get in touch with Claudia on Instagram at Pink Means Go. You can also find her on YouTube through her channel, Pink Means Go, also on LinkedIn, and through her website at pinkmeansgo.com. Stay connected with New Horizon Moms. You can reach out to us through Instagram at esmeralda.lunaramos, through LinkedIn at New Horizon Moms, and through email at newhorizonmoms@gmail.com. If this discussion resonated with you, hit like and subscribe to the New Horizon Moms channel for more career pause empowerment. See you soon.